My name is Myron Voss, 34 years old. The velvet box had felt ridiculous when it arrived, an invitation wrapped like a jewel, but that was Ava, converting oxygen into spectacle. The card inside announced an intimate engagement dinner in a serif that tried too hard, with directions to a rooftop venue whose elevator alone probably had its own publicist. I ironed my dress and told myself I was going for Dad, who had called me a month earlier in a hushed voice asking if I could quietly help. His exact words were, "She wants something special, but the budget's tight. I'll pay you back. She doesn't have to know." I said yes, because I was still in the habit of picking up the slack no one could admit existed. I booked the place, locked in the food and wine package, confirmed the lighting cues and the DJ's set list. The manager shook my hand and put my card on file. The elevator opened to a wash of warm bulbs and glass. Ava floated in a white dress that cost more than 2 months of my rent, gold in her hair, champagne in her hand, her smile aimed like a flashlight. Jackson stood half a step behind her, handsome and a little glassy-eyed, the expression of a man who didn't realize the role came with lines. I recognized cousins, a neighbor from our old block, a few of her friends from the Pilates studio who hugged her like they were being filmed. I looked for a seating chart and found none. "Where should I sit?" I asked a staffer in black. She checked a tablet, then pointed toward the dim edge of the room by a hallway sign that read, "Please wait to be seated." On a small side table, a card waited. My name, centered and crisp. The laugh that tried to climb my throat became a smile before anyone saw it. I'd paid $8,000 so I could sit beside the restroom with my name printed like an apology. I thought of Dad's promise to keep my involvement quiet. I thought of how he'd said he wanted Ava to feel special, and how easily special becomes weapon in our family. Ava took the mic. She tapped it with 3 tiny dings like she was announcing a treaty. "Thank you all for coming," she began, and people hushed themselves. She thanked our mother, hugged our father, kissed Jackson's cheek in a way that performed tenderness more than it contained it. "Just a quick note before we get started," she added, gesturing to the long table glowing at the center. "These seats are reserved for immediate family, parents, aunts, uncles. The rest of you can grab any seat in the lounge or the side tables." She turned her face toward me as if she'd only just remembered I existed. "Oh, and Marin, we saved you a cozy little seat in the corner." 70 faces followed her finger. My mother's chuckle came out bright and neat. "It's better this way," she said, just loud enough for the 3 nearest tables to absorb it like a communion wafer. I didn't give Ava my frown. I gave her the same smile I might offer a stranger who steps on my toe and insists it's my fault, because I knew what she didn't. The approvals, the deposits, the fragile scaffolding of brightness holding this entire evening up, every filament of it was tied to my card and my name. The event manager and I had shared a brief conversation when I arrived, the kind where agreements are confirmed with quiet nods. I'd told him to hold until further notice. "Of course, Ms. Voss," he'd said, slipping dignity into the syllables of my name like a secret apology for the corner place card. I waited 10 minutes. The DJ slid from something sparkly into something soft. Conversations loosened. I could feel Mom's satisfaction humming like a low note. I could feel Dad trying not to look at me. Ava drank her champagne like it was compliments. Jackson leaned in to say something, and she didn't hear him. My phone buzzed once in my clutch. Services suspended. Cancellation complete. The lights didn't flicker. They surrendered. One moment the room glowed like a Pinterest fantasy. The next, the rooftop became a hush of faces lit by their own small screens. The DJ's track cut mid-vowel, and his board sighed into silence. A cluster of candles on the long table died in sympathy as the HVAC thumped to a stop. Someone tittered, "Maybe it's part of the program." People lifted their phones, white squares floating like paper lanterns over linen and glass. A minute later, confusion crept in at the edges of the crowd, the way water seeps beneath a door. Plates weren't arriving. Wine stopped being poured. Staff vanished toward the service elevator, soft-souled and efficient, the way good staff do when they've been told there is nothing further to serve. Dad saw the manager first. He crossed the room quickly, said something too short to be a conversation, and turned, his eyes finding me and altering, the way eyes do when they meet an answer they hoped wasn't true. He walked over, slower now. "You actually did it," he said. Not angry, just astonished at the limit he'd never expected me to reach. You told me she'd never know I paid, I said. You told me you wanted her to feel special, not to play me like a prop. He rubbed the back of his neck and looked at the dark, as if he might reason with electricity. I told you I'd pay you back, he said, small. I heard you. Ava was still near the mic stand, frozen at first, then thawing into outrage. She moved on the manager like a storm cell, her voice slicing the quiet. This is unacceptable. Do you have any idea what night this is? The manager kept his tone even. We were instructed by the card holder to cancel service and lighting. There's nothing further we can do. The sentence reached her in fractions. Card holder, cancel, nothing. She followed the logic to the inevitable end and found me there, exactly where she'd assigned me. For a breath, she only stared, face empty, the same clean emptiness you see on a white plate before someone decides what to serve. Then she started toward me. Mom intercepted her like a stage manager who senses a microphone about to capture the wrong kind of truth. Their heads pressed close, words hissed. A hand tightened on an elbow. Guests began to leave in polite handfuls. An aunt wrapped her in a sorry hug that was mostly performance and slid into the elevator. Jackson, on his way past my table toward the bar that wasn't serving, stopped. You really pulled the plug? He asked, thinly amused and very tired. She told me to sit in the corner, I said. He nodded once, nothing like approval and nothing like blame, and kept walking. No one had trained him for this part. I stood. Dad tried to catch my wrist, the way a person reaches for a glass tipping off a table. I didn't want it to go like this, he said, softer than I deserved, after the last month of logistics and lies. Neither did I said. But she chose the stage. I chose the lights. I didn't look back. Not at the blank windows mirroring a party that wasn't happening. Not at the low, expensive cake sweating under a film of plastic in the prep kitchen, never to be sliced. Not at my mother, who had always preferred me tidy and off-camera. The elevator doors closed with a whisper and delivered me to a lobby that smelled like lemon oil and relief. Ava didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't send one of those hothouse arrangements her friends post when they want to equate apology with floristry. Silence from her was never peace. It was plotting. The only voice that came was Dad's, 2 days later in a voicemail, where he sounded older than the man who'd called me kiddo when I was 27 and he needed a co-signature. He said he was sorry. He said he hadn't known she'd turn a spotlight into a blade. He said he felt guilty for letting me walk out alone. I let the message sit for a week. I went to work, went to the gym, and woke without bracing. Small luxuries. Something in me had unhooked. I was done paying to stand in rooms where people rehearsed cruelty as if it were tradition. Then Ava posted, a carousel of edited moments from the first half hour, a ring posed on knuckles, champagne flutes touching, a black and white where she stared toward a city that could not possibly care. The caption read like a postcard from a life that never happened. Engaged to my soulmate, a night I'll never forget. No mention of the blackout, no mention of the guests who ate dinner elsewhere. The comments tried to leak truth and were ignored. In my closet, an $2,800 bracelet in a velvet box waited like a question I no longer needed to answer. Thin gold, elegant, engraved with her initials and the date. I had chosen it before I remembered who we were. I opened the box and closed it again. Later, a resale boutique traded it for $1,200 in cash, counted onto the glass by a woman who didn't ask why a gift looked like a goodbye. I walked home lighter by a bracelet and heavier by a certainty. Ava would never admit the cut came from her own hand. She would only learn to blame the knife. 2 weeks passed before Ava found a new stage. Not the rooftop this time, but the internet. A cousin texted me late at night. Is this you? A link followed. I tapped it and blinked at the screen. bridesoverbloodlines.com. The name alone felt like parody, but the homepage greeted me with Ava's face in soft focus, curls cascading, bouquet clutched like a trophy. The post's title, What do you do when the person you trusted most turns off the lights on your happiness? I scrolled. Paragraph after paragraph, Ava recast herself as a tragic heroine betrayed by her own blood. She claimed a wolf in sister's clothing had sabotaged her dinner out of jealousy. She painted herself as glowing with love, blindsided by cruelty. She didn't write my name, but she didn't have to. My older sister, bitter, single, always controlling. It was practically signed. At first, I laughed, a quick, sharp sound that startled even me, but nausea followed. She wasn't just spinning a story, she was rewriting reality in real time. The comments burned worse. Strangers telling her she was resilient, that family could be the cruelest. You're better off without her. Cut the toxicity now before your wedding day. And then one line that stopped me cold. I can't believe her own mother let her do this. If my daughter pulled that stunt, she'd be out of the family. The username was familiar, @Buggerin my mother's gardening account, the same one she used to post photos of roses and complain about the neighbor's fence. She hadn't even tried to hide it. I closed the laptop and stared at my reflection in the black screen. It was never just Ava. It never had been. The next morning, my bank pinged me twice. 2 declined transactions on the same card I'd used to book Ava's dinner, both from the venue, both for thousands. I called the manager directly. His voice carried apology, but not surprise. "Ms. Voss," he said, "someone attempted to rebook the rooftop under your card. We rejected it. I thought you should know." "How?" I asked. He sighed. "Invoices get emailed to 3 people. You, your father, and me. I didn't share it." That left Ava. She'd taken my card info from the invoice and tried to use it again, as if it were hers by right. As if humiliation wasn't enough, theft would follow. I filed a fraud report. The bank froze the card. And instead of rage, I felt something almost clinical, like watching a lab experiment. Ava's unraveling wasn't chaotic. It was meticulous. I sent her one message, direct and clean. Try that again, and I go public. Receipts, texts, screenshots. You want betrayal? Try credit card fraud. She didn't reply, but within hours, brides over bloodlines vanished. Not just her post. The entire site dissolved into a 404 error, like it had never existed. The following evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. I didn't know about the card. She didn't tell me. I'm sorry. No emojis. No excuses. Just quiet confirmation that even he was being left out of the loop. For the first time, I wondered if Ava's own fiancé was beginning to see the cracks. That week, Dad left me another voicemail. His voice sounded thinner, worn down. I had no idea she'd try something like that. I should have stopped it earlier. I'm sorry, Marin. I didn't call back. But I didn't delete it either. Because his voice, stripped of certainty, felt like the first honest thing he'd given me in years. Then silence stretched. A whole month without posts, calls, or card attempts. Ava disappeared, at least from my corner of the world. I started to believe she'd finally realized how far she'd pushed it. Until one afternoon, while scrolling idly, I saw her Instagram. Not a blog, not a rant, just a carousel of her, smiling in candlelight, ring glinting. Caption, engaged to my soulmate, a night I'll never forget. No mention of the blackout. No mention of guests who never got fed. Just Ava, still queen of her curated kingdom. And buried among the likes was one from Mom. That night, I dug out the empty velvet box from my closet, the one that had held the gold bracelet I sold for $1,200 cash. I set it on my desk and stared at it for a long while. I had bought it in good faith, believing we'd maybe turned a corner. Instead, it had become the sharpest metaphor in the room. Value stripped, resold, recouped, redirected. Ava would never know. But I did. And that was enough. The quiet didn't last. First, it was my mother. A voicemail dropped into my inbox one Tuesday afternoon. Her voice was clipped, brisk, the way she spoke when she was pretending to be calm but wanted to land a blow. "You embarrassed the whole family," she said. That was it. No question about how I was. No acknowledgement of what had been done to me. Just a verdict. I replayed it once, then deleted it. The predictability was almost funny. Then came my father. And this time he didn't call. He showed up. I opened the door to find him standing there like a man rehearsing a speech he no longer believed in. He sat on my couch, looked around my apartment as if seeing it for the first time, and asked quietly, "Are you still mad at me?" I shook my head. "No, I'm disappointed and tired." He nodded like he'd expected that, his hands twisted together. "It wasn't about the money, was it?" "No," I said. "It never was. It was about being treated like the net under Ava's tightrope while everyone applauded her for walking it." For once, he didn't argue. He listened. Really listened. Then he dropped something I wasn't prepared for. "She's pregnant," he said. I stared. My first instinct was that it was another ploy, some emotional grenade designed to pull me back into orbit. But no, his face told me it was true. She told us last week. Didn't want it public until she was past 8 weeks. His voice was flat, resigned. Jackson looked surprised. I don't think he saw it coming. He paused, then added, "They're not doing well. She's paranoid, moody. He's quiet, too quiet." I shrugged. Not my problem. That was when he pulled an envelope from his jacket. I recognized the handwriting before I even opened it. Ava's. Inside was a folded sheet of paper and a check. The note was short. "I know I went too far. I didn't mean to hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I don't want to owe you." The check was for $8,000, the exact amount I had paid for her engagement dinner. I stared at it, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I knew exactly what it was. A transaction, not an apology. Ava's currency was money, not accountability. She didn't make amends. She made payouts. I handed the envelope back to my father. "She can keep her money. I'm not interested." "But it's everything you spent," he said. "And it's still not enough," I replied. He didn't argue. He just folded the envelope back into his jacket, looking older than he had on that rooftop, and left. 3 days later, another envelope arrived in my mailbox. This one pastel pink, sprinkled with gold stars. A baby shower invitation. Baby shower for Ava, hosted by Mom and Dad. Registry available. Gifts welcome. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my tea. I didn't RSVP. I didn't text. I didn't even pretend to be on the fence. But I showed up anyway. Not to celebrate. Not for closure. I went because I wanted Ava to see me walk in on my own terms, carrying the only gift she would never forget. The shower was at the country club, of course. White tablecloths, pink balloons, a life-size stork cut out near the door. Ava posed in front of a balloon arch, her hand on her belly, her smile polished for the cameras. My mother hovered nearby, hosting like she was the guest of honor. My father sat off to the side, scrolling through his phone as if distance could make him invisible. I walked in holding a plain brown package. No bow, no glitter, no gift bag, just cardboard and tape. Conversations dipped when people noticed me, then picked back up in the way polite society does when pretending not to watch. Only one cousin whispered, "You're brave." I didn't answer. I wasn't there to be brave. When it was time for gifts, Ava sat in a white tufted chair like a queen accepting tributes. One by one, she unwrapped diaper bags, bottles, monitors. My mother narrated each item like she was emceeing a game show. Laughter rose and fell like applause. Then she reached for my package. She hesitated, read the label twice, even though it was just her name in black ink. Someone chuckled nervously. She peeled the tape back slowly, as though it might explode. Tissue paper rustled, and then silence. Inside was a single hardcover book, the title stamped bold across the front. How Not to Be Stupid. Lessons you didn't learn the first time. No note, no inscription, just the book, blunt and undeniable. The room froze. The smiles collapsed. Even the balloon arch seemed to wilt. Ava stared at it like she'd been handed a weapon instead of a gift. She turned it over, checked for a message, found none. Then she looked at me. I smiled. Not smug, not cruel, just a steady, quiet smile. The kind that says, "You earned this." Her hands shook as she set the book back in the box and moved on. No comment, no acknowledgement, just an attempt to keep the pageantry afloat. But I saw the tremor. I saw the crack. I didn't stay long. I said a quick goodbye to my father, ignored my mother entirely, and left before they cut the cake. Later, I heard they played baby trivia, guessing her cravings. Fitting, really. Her life had always been one long craving, control, attention, applause. That night, I placed my shower dress back on its hanger and slipped into bed. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. Because I hadn't gone there to win. I'd gone there to be remembered. The baby was born in late spring. I didn't send flowers. I didn't text congratulations. I didn't even ask for her name. A month later, I mailed a small package. No return address. Inside was a novelty onesie that read, "My aunt doesn't babysit," she observes. Alongside it, a parenting book titled Raising Yourself First. Weeks later, Ava posted a vague Instagram story. Pink background, white script. People think they're funny. No photo of the baby, just that. For once, I didn't feel anger. I felt distance, and distance was better than any revenge. My parents tried the familiar dance. Mom left a voicemail saying, "We should start fresh, for the baby's sake." She never said the words "you were right." She never asked how I was. Just a request for me to reset the board she and Ava had flipped. Dad texted me a photo of the infant, captioned, "She has your eyes." She didn't. And even if she had, it wouldn't have been enough. I didn't reply. I stopped showing up. But every so often I sent something. Not spiteful, surgical, just enough to remind Ava that silence didn't mean blindness. At Christmas, I mailed a flat package. Inside, a framed quote that read, "Some lessons come in silence. Others come in brown boxes." No signature, no note. I imagined her unwrapping it in the middle of her curated living room, pastel bows and monogrammed baby toys around her, Mom cooing, Dad scrolling. I imagined her hands tightening on the frame, her smile faltering, the air around her stiffening, while everyone else laughed nervously and moved on. Because Ava understood symbols better than words, and this one was mine. 6 months passed. No blog posts, no card fraud attempts, no backhanded gifts from my mother wrapped in empty apologies. It was almost quiet, almost peace, until last week. I came home after work to find an envelope on my doorstep. Thick, heavy paper, no stamp, no address, just my name in Ava's handwriting, a little messier than usual. I set it on the counter and poured a glass of wine, stared at it while I cooked dinner, let it sit there like an unexploded firework. When I finally opened it, 3 things slid out. First, a photo. Not of the baby, not of her and Jackson. A man I didn't recognize immediately, sitting at a cafe table with a toddler on his lap. His face was vaguely familiar, like someone you think you've passed on the street. On the back, Ava had written, "Thought you might want to know what he looks like. Took me a while to find him." Second, a crumpled piece of notebook paper. My stomach flipped when I recognized it. It was mine, ripped from an old college journal. My handwriting across the page, messy, confessional. I had written about a man I dated briefly, someone who ghosted me without a word, someone I'd never spoken of to Ava. Third, a DNA test kit, still sealed. A sticky note slapped across the box in Ava's unmistakable scrawl. "She looks nothing like Jackson. I don't think he knows." I sat very still, the 3 items spread across my kitchen table. Ava's games had always been about image, about humiliation and control. But this wasn't a stunt. It wasn't another blog or another swipe of my credit card. This was different. This was leverage or chaos or both. She had found someone, dug through my past, dragged out a ghost I thought I'd buried with my 20s, and now she was holding a match over the fragile scaffolding of her own engagement, her own child. The man in the photo wasn't Jackson, and the implication was clear. I placed the items back in the envelope, hands steady, heart not. I didn't text, I didn't call. I poured another glass of wine and sat in the silence of my apartment. Because I finally understood something. Ava hadn't sent me this to confess. She hadn't sent it for help. She'd sent it because she knew I was the only one who wouldn't pretend not to see it. Her world was cracking. And this time, I wasn't walking away. I was watching. The envelope sat on my kitchen table for days. A silent guest I couldn't throw out. Every time I passed it, the weight of it seemed to pull me sideways. The photo, the crumpled note from my own journal, the DNA kit with its bright plastic seal. It all whispered like a secret waiting to explode. At night, I caught myself staring at the man's face in the photo. I knew that jawline, that easy smile. He was the one I had scribbled about in my dorm notebook more than a decade ago, the man who disappeared without explanation. I remembered the late-night coffees, the way he had a habit of tapping his thumb against the table, the ghost of a promise in his eyes before he vanished. I hadn't thought of him in years. Ava had dug him out of the dirt like an archaeologist uncovering bones. But why? I thought about Jackson, his stiff politeness, his eyes darting at the engagement dinner when the lights went out, searching for stability. Did he already suspect? Did Ava want me to be the detonator she could blame when the truth bled out? My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "We need to talk about family. Ava's been under a lot of stress. No mention of the baby, no mention of me. Just another request for me to fix what Ava had shattered." I didn't reply. I poured myself tea, set it next to the envelope, and opened the DNA kit box. The swabs gleamed sterile under the kitchen light, ordinary tools for extraordinary devastation. My stomach clenched. This wasn't just Ava's game anymore. This was evidence. The sticky note replayed in my head. She looks nothing like Jackson. I don't think he knows. I wanted to throw it all away, but the thought of Jackson holding that baby, oblivious, gnawed at me. The thought of Ava watching him, knowing, or maybe not knowing herself, was worse. I called the only person outside the family who had ever kept my secrets, Eliza, the event manager from the rooftop. She answered on the second ring. "You never call unless it's bad," she said. "It's bad," I admitted. We met the next day in the quiet corner of a cafe. I slid the photo and the kit across the table. She didn't gasp, didn't dramatize. She studied them like puzzle pieces. "She wants you to do her dirty work," Eliza said finally. "If you blow this open, Ava gets to cry victim again. If you stay quiet, she controls the truth. Either way, she wins." "Then what do?" I asked. "You decide who deserves the truth," she said, "and whether it's worth setting yourself on fire to give it to them." That night, I sat in my apartment with the envelope spread out again. The bracelet box I'd once bought for Ava sat nearby, still empty. Two symbols side by side, the gift she never deserved, and the truth she didn't know how to hold. I drafted 3 messages on my phone. One to Ava. "If you don't tell him, I will." One to Jackson. "We need to talk. Tonight." One to my father. "How long have you known?" I didn't send any of them. I placed the phone face down. Because the truth was no longer just Ava's to weaponize. It was mine to decide whether to unleash. And the decision would not just change her life. It would change mine. I barely slept that night. The envelope stayed on the kitchen table like a live wire, its contents humming in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the baby's face, round, innocent, and the sticky note taped across the DNA kit. "She looks nothing like Jackson. I don't think he knows." By morning, I'd made coffee but hadn't touched it. My phone screen glowed with notifications. Mom's missed call, 2 texts from Dad, "Please call me," and 1 from Ava. It was a single line. "You opened it, didn't you?" No apology, no explanation. Just confirmation that she knew exactly what kind of grenade she had dropped into my life. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Eliza again. "If I stay quiet, I'm complicit," I said. "If I tell Jackson, I'm the villain in Ava's next story." She paused on the other end. "Or," she said, "you make Ava responsible for her own truth. You give her a deadline. If she doesn't tell him, you do. That way, when it detonates, the blood isn't on your hands." I thought about it all day. By evening, I'd written a list on a yellow notepad, 3 columns across the page. Option A, confront Ava privately, demand she come clean. Risk, she spins it, drags me as jealous, rewrites me again. Option B, tell Jackson directly. Risk, he doesn't believe me, Ava gets to call me a liar, and the child grows up in the middle of crossfire. Option C, stay silent. Risk, I live with the knowledge, and Ava wins by burying me under her chaos. None of the choices look like peace. At 9:00 p.m., I walked to the closet and pulled down a box I hadn't touched in years. Inside, beneath old photo albums and letters, was the empty velvet box where Ava's bracelet had once lived. I set it beside the DNA kit. 2 boxes, side by side, one a gift she never received, the other a truth she never wanted, both symbols of what it cost me to share blood with her. I opened my phone and typed 1 message. To Jackson, "We need to talk tonight." I stared at the words, thumb hovering. If I pressed send, the axis of our family shifted forever. I thought of Dad, exhausted and guilty. Mom, still clinging to the fiction of appearances. Ava, building castles out of lies. And the baby, whose future was already tangled in a story she hadn't asked for. Then I thought of myself. For years, they had scripted me into their play. The reliable one, the scapegoat, the corner seat. And here I was, holding the switch that could end their show entirely. I hit send. The screen blinked once, then went quiet. I set the phone face down, exhaled, and poured the untouched coffee down the sink. Because whatever happened next, it would no longer be Ava's version of the story. It would be mine.